My name's Maria Cameron and I'm in the Local Land Services Sustainable Ag team based in the Upper Hunter. Welcome to the first online edition of the Upper Hunter Paddock Report. In this winter edition, we'll be providing you with some management and planning advice for your animal health, livestock and ag production programs, along with market reports from across our region. You'll have the opportunity to catch up at a time that's convenient for you or share the program with your mates. I'll hand you over now to our Local Land Services advisory team and guest presenters for the winter edition of the Upper Hunter Paddock Report.
G'day, I'm Teresa Hogan. I am your Senior Livestock Officer, so I'm based in the Merriwa office, but service the Upper Hunter, Lower Hunter and Manning. So some of you have seen me out and about, and others I'm yet to have the pleasure of meeting. I just wanted to touch base with you all about what's been happening and what the season is looking like as we head into winter. So seasonal conditions right across the district have been quite variable, and some of you will have noticed that with just the amount of rainfall that you've received. It has still been quite patchy, but certainly things are looking more positive than they did as we were heading into autumn for most people. There are still some patches across the Upper Hunter district that are a little bit drier than we'd like to be seeing going into this period, but most people now are seeing a much more positive situation in their paddocks. We're seeing a little bit of pasture growth. The conditions are still, as I mentioned, quite variable, but in saying that, we do see that we've still got some summer grasses that are being quite productive. So we haven't seen any frosts, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen or heard of any frosts in the district yet, which is a little bit unusual, and that is why we are seeing some of those summer grasses still being quite active and providing some feed. That being said, as soon as we start seeing those frosts, those summer grasses are going to tap out pretty quickly, and we need to make sure that what we've got coming through and those winter pastures are ready to go and take off as the season begins to kick into that more cold winter that we are expecting in the next sort of few weeks. So a couple of things as we head into winter, just to keep in mind in terms of your livestock production and management. Remembering that as soon as it starts to turn quite cold and we don't have these beautiful sunny days, the feed requirements of all classes of our livestock increases. So we need to make sure that there is enough feed in the paddock to meet that increase, because it takes a lot more energy for our animals to keep themselves warm. And if it's stayed warm with this weather for a little bit longer, they haven't actually grown the coat that they'll need to get them through winter. So just making sure that there is enough feed in front of them and particularly enough fibre just to keep the system moving and producing that energy that they need. The other thing to remember is that if we are moving into winter and we're planning on a spring lambing and calving, we need to make sure that we're meeting the nutritional requirements of our reproductive animals. So our pregnant animals in their last trimester of pregnancy, we need to be managing the nutrition in front of them. So their nutritional requirements start to increase quite rapidly in that final trimester, heading towards their time when their energy is the highest, which is when they're at peak lactation. So in that early lactation period, once the offspring hits the ground. So making sure that the feed in front of them is good quality and there's enough of it to meet those nutritional requirements is really important. And just making sure that even though if you think you've got enough feed, making sure that the quality of that feed will meet that nutritional requirement and making sure that the pastures that we've got are what we think they are. So one of the things that I see quite regularly, and I've been at this a little while, is that whilst it looks like we've got good quality pastures, they actually aren't as good a quality as we would like them to be. So they're not actually meeting that higher nutritional demand that our reproductive animals are requiring or our young growing stock are requiring. So really great time to get out in the paddock and just have a look at what your pastures are doing. Just assess how much summer pasture is still actively growing and what winter pasture is coming through should things start to turn, knowing what you've got. If you don't think that your pastures are going to meet the nutritional requirements of your livestock, a really great time to start thinking about, well, what's next? Historically, we have a winter feed gap. It's not unusual. It's usually in sort of that late July, early August. Now's the time to prepare for that, particularly with things being dry in other states. Feed demand is increasing. So if we can get on the jump on that and actually have some of that feed ready to go, should we not get the rain or our pastures don't take off as well as we'd like them to, just have some of that feed on hand so that we can throw it in front of our animals before they start slipping in condition, because once we see that slip in the paddock, we're already behind, and that's when it starts costing us money. So if we can get in ahead of that, knowing what our animals need because we know where they're up to and the nutritional requirements, it's a really good time to just be ready and getting yourself and planning. We've done it before, we've all been there, we've headed into dry periods. We know what that means for us. And hopefully, we're heading into an easier winter than we've had in previous years. But who knows at the moment? Your guess is as good as mine. So it's all about that preparation and asking the questions. So if at any time you are not sure what's happening in your paddock, or you would like a little bit of a hand planning ahead for that grazing management and meeting the nutritional requirements of your livestock, please do not hesitate to reach out. Myself and the ag team are more than happy to help you, as well as our fantastic district vets. In terms of pasture assessment, it is a skill that does take a little bit of practice. So if you aren't sure what that actually means for you in your paddock, so LLS is still offering free feed testing. So that does require spending a little bit of time with me so that data actually means something and it's not collecting dust in the bottom drawer, but I'm more than happy to do a farm visit and we can go through some of that pasture assessment. If you would like to improve your own skills in pasture assessment and livestock assessment, we will be running a ProGraze course in the next little while once we have enough numbers. So ProGraze is a pasture assessment, livestock condition monitoring program. It's usually an 8-session, they're 8 half days across an 8 to 9 month period. So we see the changes in the season where we actually are teaching you how to conduct some of that pasture assessment, work out how much herbage mass you have and what that actually translates to for your livestock. So if you are at all interested, I am looking to run one in the Upper Hunter. So again, touch base with me, let me know, and we can get one off the ground.
Hi, I'm Leanne Paulson, the District Veterinarian with Local Land Services based here in Scone. Well, we've finally made it to the end of autumn, with most of the hunter receiving some rainfall during late March and April. It's been pretty warm for this time of year with only one frost recorded. So it's no surprise we've seen some fairly spectacular numbers in fecal egg counts that have returned from farms. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind some producers of worm facts. The worms need a few things to get going each season. One of them's a host, and we provide that with our grazing animals. The other one is temperature. Our scour worms like to develop and hatch from 8 degrees and higher, where Barber's pole worm likes a little bit warmer, from 18 degrees onwards. That's why we get a bit of a break from Barber's pole during the winter months, and we're more likely to see our animals scour due to scour worms. Moisture can be a limiting factor to larval development during the drought periods, but at this time of year, they utilise the heavy dew and any rainfall to climb up the pasture sward for our grazing animals to ingest. I encourage everyone to utilise the worm test kits available at your local Land Services office. Have a chat to your local vet or Teresa Hogan, our livestock officer, for the best ways to test your animals and how to interpret those results. Whilst we're looking for the egg numbers in your animals, I want producers to remember that most of the worm burden is actually on the pasture. Here are some numbers to reflect this point. If the worm egg count come back at 337 eggs per gram and each lamb produced 1 kilogram of manure each day, that would be 337,000 eggs per head per day. So in a mob of 1,000 lambs, that's 337 million eggs per day onto your pasture. There's been a lot of noise made about drench resistance from industry and from our producers, but another explanation is drench failure. So before you think you have a drench resistance problem, I want you to check off the following. Did you use the correct drench for the correct parasite? And have you tested the worm egg count prior to and 14 days after using the product. Did the drench get administered via the intended route? Now this may sound silly, but I've had producers give backlines orally and oral drenches as backlines. Have you dosed the animals appropriately? If possible, weigh the animals prior to treatment, divide them up into groups, your heavy, average and tail, and adjust the dose. Calibrate the gun. When was the last time you measured the output of product? The gun says 20 mils, are you getting 20 mils into your animals? The springs in these guns fatigue and the rubbers get sticky. The barrel may not recharge appropriately. Going back to the contamination example used earlier, it's important to put your livestock onto fresh pasture after drenching to avoid reinfestation. Use worm egg counts where possible. Avoid drenching or testing once you have clinical signs. You're already experiencing production losses at this time. Over summer, we recommend checking your mobs every 5 to 6 weeks, and over winter, that can be extended out to every 6 to 8 weeks. If you perform testing after drenching, 10 to 14 days, you can assess how effective the drench has been on your property. This might be the first indication that you have drench resistance within the worms on your property. Our livestock need up to 20% more feed during the cooler months. It's a good idea to assess their condition regularly. You can use your phone to take photos. Do a stock take of the feed available in your paddock and in the shed. Will this get you through the winter? Start looking at feed prices and the availability and your ability to feed this out. Will this meet your production needs? Prepare for dietary changes in your livestock. At a minimum, vaccinate with a 5-in-1 product 2 weeks before introducing new feed or moving them onto that fresh paddock. Only small changes can affect the rumen microbes, leading to deaths due to pulpy kidney. Prior to buying feeds, ask for a commodity vendor declaration. You don't want to introduce chemical residues to your stock via the feed. If purchasing hay, consider doing nitrate testing to avoid unnecessary deaths.
Hi, I'm Sarah Giblin, Team Leader, Extension Ag with the Hunter Local Land Services.
And I'm Sarah Baker. I work with New South Wales DPI RD, and I'm the Pastures Development Officer based in Tamworth.
Just recently, we have had pasture dieback confirmed in several locations in the upper and lower Hunter areas.
When we're looking for dieback, we're sort of looking through progression through 4 stages. So the first thing that you might notice is leaf discoloration in your grasses. It only impacts our summer growing grasses. So this is species like kikuyu, paspalum, couch, as well as things like digit grass and your paddocks. So at first you'll notice discoloration. It varies with species. So that might be yellowing in some, it might be reddening, purpling in others. Then the second stage you're looking for is these plants just looking a bit unhealthy. They might have smaller root systems, lower number of tillers, and they're just not responding to rainfall events as you might expect. Then the third stage that we see is plant death. So you'll see these grasses, your summer grasses, starting to die off in patches when you'd really expect them to be growing quite well. Then our fourth stage that we see is invasion of weeds, particularly broadleaf weeds, as these species are not impacted by dieback at all. So they're the sort of 4 stages that you're looking for: leaf discoloration, unhealthy plants, plant death, and then weed invasion. And alongside all of this, you're looking for a little thing called pasture mealybug. So we know pasture mealybug is involved in causing dieback. We're not entirely sure how, but we're seeing it turn up wherever we're seeing dieback. So this is quite a small, it's a little white bug. It's like sort of 3 to 4 mils in size, the adults. The juveniles are even smaller. And you can find this on the leaf tillers of the plants or even in the thatch. And these bugs are most active during sort of late spring, summer, and then into autumn as well. That's the best time to be looking for them. DPI-RD are here helping build capacity in the Hunter LLS around what dieback is and how to specifically manage it in their region.
Coming up, we're going to take you out into the paddock and we'll be seeing typically what we're observing in the paddock in regards to the symptoms of pasture dieback.
Pasture dieback was first discovered in Queensland in 2014 and 15 in that summer. was seen in landholders were starting to see dead patches within their paddocks of C4 pastures, and C4 pastures are a summer growing pasture species. Since then, there has been pasture dieback has starting to encroach into New South Wales, starting in the north coast, into the northern tablelands, and last year it was discovered in the northwest LLS region. Since then, we've started to see areas of pasture dieback within the lower and upper Hunter areas of the Hunter Local Land Services region. What we're starting to see is typically kikuyu, deadening of kikuyu patches and incursion of weeds like we're starting to see through now. Kikuyu starts to yellow and then starts to go dead in small patches, and over summers we start to encroach on these bigger patches that I'm seeing. In typical pastures such as our paspalum, we're starting to see reddening, discoloration, then going to plant death. Also, what is quite common is we see pasture dieback in areas where we have a big biomass of pasture. Generally where the grasses are kept to a low status and or we're mowing and or production and or well fertilised, we're not seeing it so much. But where we have the big bulky biomass of pastures, the right type of plant species, the mealybug present and plant death, that are one of the most common indicators for pasture dieback within our systems. If you're starting to see dead patches within your summer tropical pastures in the susceptible species, some tropical pastures within your area, and also the presence of mealybug on your pastures, if you start to look down in the dead or yellowing discoloration and start to see the little white mealybugs on your plants, if you're starting to see those two together, please contact us at the Local Land Services and we will get someone out to have a discussion with you about the management options. Just because you've got pasture dieback doesn't mean that all is lost. We do have management plans for you and to be able to bring your pasture systems back into production and manage the incursion of weeds. If you do think you have pasture dieback, please contact us because it may not be pasture dieback. There are other insect species and other fungal and viruses out there that can cause the same symptoms for plant death. And through reaching out and contacting your agronomist or local land services, we can look through that and investigate that with you to see what is actually causing your pastures to die. Once you have engaged with an agronomist or local land services and it has been confirmed that you have pasture dieback, we can work through with you in a management step process. Let's look at where that is impacting your farming system and what type of production system you have. Managing pasture death could be as simple as introducing some summer legumes into these areas, because as pasture dieback doesn't affect our summer legumes, nor does it affect our temperate grass species. Farm hygiene is also of utmost importance as part of your farm biosecurity plan. If you are within these areas where we do have pasture dieback, please ensure that you're decontaminating your shoes if you're going onto another person's property as part of your good practices for farm hygiene and biosecurity plan. That can be easily done by spraying down your boots with metho water solution and also getting an air compressor or blowing off your boots and or machinery that have been through these areas as well.
So we're just really encouraging people to get out to have a look at their pastures. If you see something unusual, if you see discoloration, if you see it not responding to the rain how you expected, then get in contact with local land services.
Stuart Sheldrake. I'm Director and Livestock Agent with McGrath Upper Hunter here in Scone and the Upper Hunter Valley. We're seeing here in the Upper Hunter here, in May or the end of autumn, one of the best seasons now of all time, and we're seeing here in Scone probably one of the best seasons, autumns heading into winter that we've seen. Merriwa and those places have gotten their crops in. There's abundance of feed happening. So it's really buzzing here at the moment and the market's going with it, which is great to see. We're seeing the cow market, it's been pretty solid all year and all indications are that it's going to increase as we head into the winter months. We're going to see probably a bit of a shorter supply of cows. That's the normal trend come your July, August periods. So hopefully off the back of that, we'll see a little rise, especially on the fat market where we're seeing a drier period in the south. That'll have an impact, I believe, on the export market and probably the whole market in general. So it's great times for the cattle industry, especially in the local area. As I said before, we're experiencing a great season, so we're heading into winter with a bulk of feed. Yes, it will get cold, but cattle are in great order, so we should be seeing those cattle handle, if we do get a cold snap, handle that quite well. What we are experiencing from an agency point of view is we're starting to get a lot of calls from those guys out of the south, a lot of calls for agistment, because they're experiencing probably what we experienced here 4, 5, 6 years ago. So there's quite a lot of that happening at the moment, and people taking on cattle out of the south. So there's a great opportunity for, whether you want to go buy your own cattle and do a job with those, or there's also those agistment options too. So the season's looking very good. The market, like I said before, it's been pretty solid. Like we're seeing weaners, anything decent from crossbred weaners through to black weaners from 300 kilos and up, making anywhere from $3.80 through to $4.40 and $50 depending on your weight. Heifer calves making $3.50 or $3.30 through to $3.80, even touching $4 in some outstanding sales. So that's with your weaners coming back from anywhere from sort of $900 through to $1,400, that's pretty good. It's pretty good, and farmers can work with that. Yes, we all like to see it a bit better, but at the moment it's a lot better than what it was in the last 12, 24 months. So look, season looks good. Couldn't get it any better. The market, and hopefully this market, I think you'll see, especially the southern processors starting to hunt for fat cattle, which will benefit us experiencing these good seasons. They'll step up into our markets here probably by the end of May, hopefully into June and July. And I think you'll see hopefully a bit of an increase in some livestock sales through the winter period.
Hi, my name's Kim Jones. I'm an agronomist at Nutrient Ag Solutions here in Scone. This season is looking really great actually. There's a lot of good feed around the area, lots of good green feed. Most of the area has received good rainfall and therefore has turned into a very good autumn, and we're looking towards a very well-received, easy winter. Forage crops that were sown in late February and March are looking fantastic across the region. Lots of great feed there to be utilised by stock or for potentially making forage crops and hay conservation in the later end of the season. As we have such a great season with our forage crops and pasture systems, we really encourage farmers to make the most out of these systems and utilise them the best grazing strategy that suits their property and their enterprise. We really recommend the use of some supplements as use for stock to best utilise the green feed that is in front of them. You don't want to be wasting any of this great feed that we have, while there are friends to our south who are desperate for a speck of what we have. So after each grazing, we would recommend a top dressing of your choice. Maybe urea, could be a custom blend specific to your property and to your pasture system. We do recommend to keep stock gaining weight through this winter season to keep them on an even plane of nutrition. This is especially important for any growing stock, including weaners, heifers, even steers, cows and bulls that you may want to be selling later in the winter. Due to the great season we're having at the moment, the sowing window is still open for a pasture or even some forage crops if going into a well-prepared soil bed. If it's not well prepared, you may need to think about changing your options, potentially a tropical, or maybe thinking about your plans that you want for your property and starting to get a plan together with your advisory team, either your agronomist or the LLS, to help meet those targets that you're trying to achieve. So yeah, it's very unusual that we haven't had a first frost yet. We're in May at the moment and we still haven't got our first frost, which is quite odd. So that's really left the sowing window quite open and allowing us to plant more forage crops to feed our stock, which is great for everyone. So we've started to see quite a bit of single super phosphate go out across the area, which is fantastic. A lot of our country is quite sulphur and phosphorus deficient. So it's great that farmers are trying to combat that and look after their native or other improved pastures. We haven't seen a lot of urea go out as yet, but we do expect more to be going out onto pastures once they've had a first graze or just before a first graze even. So getting an order in for fertiliser is crucial. Not just chucking it out willy-nilly, having a plan is the best way to be efficient, be effective. So we recommend talk to your local retailer, whoever that may be, and get a plan in place and organise some fertiliser to either be in store, ready for collection, or on farm in your shed, ready to go when the time suits. We have started to see fireweed flower and turn patches of the paddocks quite yellow. We do recommend getting on top of this before the first frost hits, while it's still actively growing, as this is the best time to get a kill on fireweed. It's a very invasive weed and it is not productive and can be toxic to livestock. So we recommend get on top of your fireweed control, speak to your best advisory team and stop fireweed from becoming a major problem on your property.
My name's Jonathan Randall, Senior Biosecurity Officer with Local Land Services, based in Scone in the Upper Hunter. Plenty of pigs about. Everyone's complained about the numbers of pigs in the area. With a few good seasons back to back, the numbers have certainly bred up. Lone traps going out from LLS to different landholders, good numbers being caught around all areas, and pigs popping up in places that probably haven't popped up ever, really. We've done a couple of aerial shoots out there over the last few years and it has certainly knocked the numbers down. It'll be a good time to get on top of them now. And as we know, best practice is try and do your control within the 3-month period in the breeding cycle. So do it in April and then under 3 months later do it again, and you should get your best effect. Dogs are ramped up again come autumn, as they usually do every year. We've got the 2 contract trappers working full time, and yeah, there's still a bit of predation back to the east here of Scone. Merriwar area's been quiet for a good while, but the guys out there are doing plenty of baiting and probably just have to ramp up with the 1080 baiting a bit more in some areas where the dogs are bits of hot spots before the trappers come through. Please don't hesitate to give us a call. Hugh McCormack and myself are based here in Scone. Jack Feltham's at Merriwar. But yeah, just give your local LLS a call and you can get in touch with us that way.
My name's Jack Thomas. I'm the Senior Biosecurity Officer for EID here in the Hunter. I cover the whole region. As you may or may not have heard from the state of New South Wales of moving into electronic identification for sheep and goats. As we've started this year, so from the 1st of January 2025, all lambs and kids born from that date will have to be identified with an electronic device before they leave their property of birth. That's the first key date that we've encountered. Then from 2027, it'll be all sheep or goats before they leave their property of birth will have to be identified with an electronic device. And in terms of measures that we've put in place as a government to help support the implementation, we have the tag discount program, which is 76 cents off per tag, and that runs from the November last year all the way through until 31st of October this year. So that'll be 76 cents off the price per tag to 2025 white year of birth colour. And that'll be applied straight through your normal rural store or retailer, so there's no paperwork. If you need to order more than 3,500 devices, you will need to do a pre-approval, and that is to be found on the DPI website, and that will be a QR code displayed on your screen. Just some general updates. So far, the sale yards have started their mandatory scanning and upload, and so far since the start of the year, 13.2% of all sheep that have gone through all sale yards in New South Wales have been identified with electronic devices. So I think that's probably maybe a little bit of surprise to some. I know certainly some agents have probably found that surprising, but I think you can attribute that to a lot of stud breeders maybe, and then also the southern sale yards along the border, as Victoria have already had EID in place since 2017. That there'll be a lot of sheep going through the yards down there that will already have electronic tags. The last thing is that I have some expressions of interest for some NLIS database workshops that will go through the changes, the subtle changes that will take place now that we're transitioning to EID. So I'll have my details on screen that you can get in contact with me and let me know if you'd be interested in attending some of those.
Hi, I'm Eloise Haig. I'm the Natural Capital Advisor here at Hunter LLS. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about a new service we're offering in the Natural Capital program. Our farm profiling service has just launched and we're currently running a pilot of this program for the next few months. So our Natural Capital profiling service is all about helping you identify the natural assets on your farm, having a bit of a look at the condition of these assets and what you can do to maintain and improve these assets, along with any market opportunities that might be available for you to look into in terms of environmental and carbon markets. If you're interested in putting in an expression of interest for our Natural Capital profiling service, jump on to the LLS website and go to the Natural Capital page to get in touch with me and fill out the expression of interest form.
Thanks for tuning in to the Upper Hunter Paddock Report. Don't forget, you can follow Hunter Local Land Services on Facebook, subscribe to our e-newsletter, the Hunter Regional Outlook, via the website, and keep up to date on upcoming events via the LLS Hunter events page.